Thank you for being here. I'm sorry we're a little bit late getting started. We're here to announce the details of a $21.735 billion budget agreement reached by members of the House and the Senate this past weekend. The compromise plan includes a responsible 3.1% increase in spending, invests hundreds of millions of additional dollars in public education and other core priorities of the state, shores up the state's rainy day fund and the repair and renovation funds by a total of $600 million. This plan also increases early career teacher pay from $33,000 to $35,000 per year. That fulfills a promise that was made by state leaders last year. And over 2 years, it preserves funding for driver's education and for all teacher assistant positions supported in last year's budget, requiring school systems to use the funds for those jobs. Budget also invests an additional $705 million over 2 years for transportation needs, in part by ending a $216 million annual transfer from the highway fund to the general fund and ensuring that money is finally spent on building and maintaining safe roads and bridges. Finally, it contains a comprehensive tax reform package that reduces the tax burden on North Carolina's families and small businesses by close to $400 million over the biennium and fully restores the state tax deduction for medical expenses. The plan also extends historic preservation tax credits. I am grateful to the members of the Senate and the House for their hard work in reaching this agreement. It is fiscally smart, sustainable, and saves for North Carolina's future. There are some key provisions that I'll go over, then Speaker Moore will also go over some provisions, then we'll be more than happy to take your questions. First, it allocates $313 million in the first year alone for compensation increases to state employees, including a $750 bonus for all teachers and state employees. Offers experience-based step increases to teachers, assistant principals, state highway patrol troopers, clerks, and magistrates. It sets aside funding for pay raises to community college employees. It allocates funds for a 3% market-based salary increase for all sworn members of the State Highway Patrol. It funds Governor McCrory's recommendation to invest more than $38 million over 2 years to boost salaries for correctional officers. And it funds Governor McCrory's plan to provide additional targeted market-based pay raises to attract and retain highly effective workers. With that, I'll turn it over to Speaker Moore.
Good afternoon. The budget that we have reached an agreement on does a lot of great things that Senator Burker spoke about already, but I want to touch base on the education formula. First of all, it protected all the funding for the teaching assistants in North Carolina. It increases the funding for K-12 public schools by $410 million, for community colleges by $20 million, and for the UNC system alone by $99 million in the first year. It reduces class size in the first grade to a 1 to 16 teacher-student ratio in the second year, a step research has repeatedly shown as a key to academic success. It enhances textbook and digital learning resources, funding to ensure that students across the state receive the tools that they need to succeed. It expands the Read to Achieve summer reading camps in the first and second grades. It increases support for the Opportunity Scholarship Program by $14 million over 2 years. It provides for comprehensive data collection and study of driver education and maintains the funding for driver's education. It also allocates funding to the School Connectivity Initiative to build better broadband and Wi-Fi access to all North Carolina schools. We feel very, very comfortable and very proud of the progress that we've made in educational funding in this budget. And I think Senator Berger wanted to talk about taxes and economic development.
As I indicated earlier, the bill will cut the personal income tax rate to 5.499% beginning in 2017. It will increase the zero tax bracket in 2016, ensuring taxpayers married filing jointly pay no state personal income tax on their first $15,500 of income. It encourages job creation and private investment in North Carolina by moving to calculate corporate income taxes based on a single sales factor over the course of 3 years. Provides new local tax revenue to support education and economic development in counties with insufficient local tax dollars. The additional local revenue must be used to support public schools, community colleges, or economic development in those counties. It maintains the existing system for allocation of local sales tax revenue, where 75% is allocated based on the county where the sale takes place and 25% based on population, ensuring that no local government will lose revenue under those changes.
And some other provisions. The budget provides $225 million over 2 years to begin the process of restructuring the state's Medicaid program. We've also reached an agreement, not in the budget, but also on Medicaid reform and other legislation that has been agreed to as well. The budget increases the funding for essential court system personnel. The JPS side of the budget has, for years, not been able to get caught up with the growing needs. And fortunately, this year, we've been able to see more funding for our courts, for prosecutors, to make our streets and our towns safer. Very importantly, this lays the groundwork to give the voters the opportunity to vote on a $2 billion comprehensive bond package that will also be voted upon separately, but that will fund some very badly needed capital projects around this state that will benefit education and other services. It adjusts the fees at the Division of Motor Vehicles for the first time in more than a decade to support the additional transportation needs. As you're also aware, we also had the gas tax cuts earlier. This was the second part of that. And when you take in the end the combined tax relief that's being proposed in the budget itself, as well as the other adjustments, it is nearly, I believe, as Senator Berger said, nearly $400 million in tax relief that the citizens of this state will get through this budget. It also adopts the governor's proposal to create the Department of Information Technology. This is expected to save over $30 million in the biennium. It implements the governor's recommendation to establish a more efficient Department of Military and Veterans Affairs to close the $1.7 million to support the military installations. This full budget compromise will be posted later on today. Right now, staff are still in the process of the final drafting. We've had an opportunity to present it to our respective caucuses on the House side as well. We had a meeting of the conferees, which were both Republicans and Democrats, and laid out the budget, laid out many of the provisions, and went through and reviewed it. And we're feeling very comfortable about the level of support that we have in the House for the passage. And as in anything, this budget represents a compromise between the House budget and the Senate budget, and we're glad that we're here to do it. We recognize that we've been here a while because we have dealt with a lot of chronic problems that have been kicked down the can's been kicked down the road for decades. And we've dealt with a lot of those tough issues in this budget. So it's taken a while, but I believe we've got a very good work product at the end that our colleagues will support and that will benefit the citizens of the state.
And we'll be happy to take their questions.
I heard there was talk of a possible expansion of the tax base in terms of some services. Can you address that?
There is in the finance portion of the budget an expansion of the sales tax base to include some services. It's basically the same expansion that passed the House in House Bill 998 a couple of years ago, I think.
So is that money going to those rural counties?
Well, as you know, when sales taxes are collected, there's a portion that's state, so some of it comes to the state, and there's a portion that goes to counties. The expansion actually goes per the existing formula, 75-25.
One thing that when we were negotiating this on our side that I tasked David Lewis, who's here with, was to try to find a way to address the issue with the rural counties, but not in any way to hurt the urban counties. And we've actually found a way to do that. This will cost no county any money. There are truly no losers in this plan. There's no money being taken away from the urban areas the way it's been structured.
It seems like the timing, if there's pressure on the governor to sign it right away, what if he wants more time or doesn't want to sign it? What considerations are there with the Friday deadline?
Well, we're hopeful that the governor, after having an opportunity to review this budget, will very quickly embrace it and sign it into law. But we believe there's adequate time. Of course, under our rules in the House, we can't vote on it until the budget has been out there for 3 legislative days. It'll be online today, and some of the details have certainly been shared with the governor, and we believe and hope that he has ample time to see it, and certainly hope to have his support.
opportunity scholarships you mentioned. Can you go into detail on that? How many? You said $14 million every 2 years, and
I think that's correct.
And how many new scholarships will that fund?
I don't have that exact number. We can get that information to you.
I believe 6.8 the first year and 14 the second year.
What's the message to veteran teachers who, again, might feel overlooked?
Veteran teachers are going to receive the same $750 bonus that every other teacher receives. All the teachers being treated the same, with the exception of the beginning teachers are going to receive that bump to get North Carolina to above the regional average in beginning pay, and also for years we had a salary schedule that was not funded. When folks would get to the point where they got to a step increase, they wouldn't get the raise. We fully fund the step increase.
Quick follow, if a 20-year teacher thinks that's a slap in the face, what would you say to that person?
I would say that the amount of money that we're putting into education this year, also taking into account the amount of money we're putting into education, particularly salary education, restructuring of the salary schedule, is something that represents a significant investment by the state in education and in our teachers.
Can you talk about the flexibility that's going along with the TA funding? Do they have flexibility in the local school systems to use that money?
The TA funding, we have heard from the superintendents around the state that they did not want TAs cut. The TA funding is fully implemented, but there will be all of the money will be used for TAs
In both years.
in both years.
Right. The House budget, of course, maintained the flexibility, but after looking at it and seeing how the money's used, we felt comfortable that the TA money there could take care of the issue with the TAs, and if there were any other issues, there's plenty of extra money to deal with that.
Okay, I had Gary over here.
The governor seems to think that the sales tax expansion is a tax increase, and NFIB seems to think so as well. What would you say to him to try to assuage his concerns that this would hurt low, middle-income people?
I think what you've got to do is look at the overall package with reference to taxes, and the overall package represents a net tax cut for the people of North Carolina. We have, for a long time, had a problem with our budget that was overly dependent on income taxes, and so when we had problems with the overall economy, that's when you saw those wild swings. And we've been trying to move to an expanded base on the sales tax, which is a more stable source of revenue for the state. So what I would say is that overall it is a substantial tax cut for folks. The increase in the standard deduction from $15,000 to $15,500 is particularly beneficial for those at the lower end of the income scale. I think Laura,
Sorry, credits and deductions. You said medical deduction fully restored. Is that for everyone or just seniors?
for everyone.
That's the medical deduction is fully restored and it is not capped.
Not capped. Great. And the other question on the historic tax credit, is that coming back at 20% or is it going to be like the House version of the bill that Steve Ross made?
It was in the House version. I believe the net cost was roughly $8 million.
Okay. Thank you.
In the second year.
For those of us who don't remember House Bill 998 from a couple of years ago, what sort of things are going to be taxed now under the expansion?
Basically, if you had a service that was associated with the purchase of a good that is presently taxed, then the service or the installation of that good would be taxed.
So you're
So
not.
that's kind of a short.
So things like warranties on refrigerators, but you're not going to things like you expanded to this year, like taxes on advertising.
No advertising, no vending.
None of that. This is where where the sale of the good is also involved with the service. The benefit of that as well, Mark, is that you don't create additional retailers for the purposes of tax collection.
Is there a COLA for retirees?
What if you have a service company that doesn't sell retail? Will they fall under the new tax, expanded tax base?
If their current good sales are not taxable, the service associated with that good should not be taxable.
So you have money for Medicaid reform. When are we going to see some of the details and have a sense as to what it's going to be?
There are three other bills that are tied to the budget bill. One is the Economic Development Bill 117. I think we'll see that moving pretty quickly. Another is the Medicaid reform bill. We see that moving pretty quickly. And the third is the bond bill, and we'll see movement on the bond. All of these things will move with a certain schedule going along with each other.
Well, we have, with respect to the economic development bill and the Medicaid reform, the actual language of the bill has really been agreed to at this point. So those will be ready to roll in short order. As far as the bond amount, we've agreed on the $2 billion amount. We're going to still work through the particular projects.
So does this mean that it'll all be done by the end of the continuing resolution?
I think it will all be, well, the budget will be done before the end of the continuing resolution. The other bills may be in the next week.
Senator Brown mentioned last week that he thought it was the difference in spending between the House and the Senate that caused some of the delay, and then Speaker Moore just said we dealt with a lot of complicated issues in this budget. So what took so long, and I guess you could comment on that.
Well, one of the complicated issues was that we had extra money this year that we haven't had in the past. But the reality is we've talked about Medicaid reform for years. We've talked about ending the transfer from the highway fund for years. We've talked about some of the issues having to do with tax reform. Remember, we're talking about putting into the bill something that was in a House bill a couple of years ago. So these are issues that have been around for a while. And what I would say is, yes, it has taken us longer than we would have liked. But if you look at the big issues that we've dealt with, if you look at how we've resolved some things that have been nagging for a fairly substantial period of time. And I think you've heard me say, and I'm sure that the Speaker said the same thing, we're concerned about the length of time, but the more important thing is that we get it right. And so I think that's what we've done with this.
And one part of the time it's taken has been getting public input. We've tried to air a lot of these provisions out there and to make sure there's been ample opportunity for public discussion, to make sure members have been informed. And so a necessary part of that is that it takes longer to get that information out there. So that's one thing that we've really tried to highlight in this budget, transparency and openness and input.
You said 117 was tied to the budget bill, and you all passed somewhat different versions of that bill. Can you give us an idea of what's in there, how it might impact on the budget?
Certainly. The version of 117 will be very similar to what the House passed. The changes the Senate made that would be incorporated were what's called the Super JDIG Fund. If you have a project that has a very high number of employees and a very large investment, it's eligible for additional incentive. I believe the way the money is appropriated, that only half can be spent during part of the year. I can't remember the other change right off. The match for local governments, Tier 1 county would have to match $1 for every $3 of state dollars, and one North Carolina, Tier 2, $1 for every $2 in state money. Tier 3, a 1-to-1 match, which is those are two of the big differences. Exactly.
What about the attractions? Are they going to move over to cultural resources, and what will happen to those employees?
We did follow the governor's recommendation for the transfer, and those employees will be moved administratively to the different agency.
Are nonprofits going to keep their tax exemption?
Yes, we did maintain the tax exemption for the nonprofits. No changes there.
Can you elaborate a little bit on how the additional sales tax flexibility for low-wealth counties would work out for a county that is interested in having some additional taxing authority and would be using this process?
I don't believe there's anything that expands the authority of local governments to impose sales taxes. There is a formula for distribution of certain funds that would go to some low-wealth counties.
Yeah, so how would that work out without impacting the bottom line for an urban county that would, under this plan, I guess, not see any lower revenue?
Well, just the way it's structured, it's a fairly complicated mechanism, probably a little more complicated than I can explain over the next 15 minutes, to be frank with you.
Anything on renewable energy in this budget?
No.
Two smaller items. You eugenics is Representative Stan's eugenics provision in there that will allow the forward funding of that? And are we going to read anything with regard to flounder?
Nothing with respect.
Nothing fishy
I don't
about
think
that.
anything fishy at all. And the eugenics, I believe you're talking about the additional payment. Yes, that's.
What about lottery? Sorry.
There's no change as far as the lottery advertising.
Are you going to see any changes to the certificate of need regimen in the budget or in the Medicaid bill?
Nothing in the budget. There's still some discussions going on about that.
The $750 per employee, is that a one-time bonus, or is that a recurring?
One-time bonus. John?
Could you quickly go back to renewable energy? So when you said nothing in the budget, do you mean no changes? Are there tax credits, renewable energy? What do you say?
There are no changes with reference. I believe there's a renewable energy tax credit that's set to sunset that is not extended in the budget, and there is no plan to extend it.
That's correct. We passed earlier this session the Safe Harbor Act that would apply for certain projects. And I think that still has 2 years left on it, but that wasn't addressed in the budget.
Senator, this is always about negotiations about give and take. What would you say the Senate gave up in order to get this plan?
Well, we were willing to work with the House on a number of things. The House was willing to work with us on a number of things. I think all you have to do is look at the House budget, look at the Senate budget, and look at this budget, and you'll see where the compromises were. The teacher assistance is one, driver's ed is another, the tax package is another, the Medicaid reform is still another. So I think the Speaker and I would tell you that this is something that is not perfect as far as the Senate is concerned. It's not perfect as far as the House is concerned, but I think both the House and the Senate recognize it as an appropriate compromise that moves North Carolina in the right direction.
And I agree with Senator Berger. It is a fair compromise. We started off with 2 very different positions on the number of things, but the process worked the way it should. We had a lot of involvement. The folks who are standing here behind the two of us have spent many hours, many days, and weeks being here, working through sometimes very monotonous details, and then sometimes dealing with pretty significant issues to come up with a budget that we believe takes care of the priorities that the senators have, takes care of the priorities that House members have, and at the end of the day, moves the state forward. So it's a long process, but it's been, as I said, an open process. We've tried to get public input, and we wanted to make sure all the members can participate. And in the end, I think it's something that folks can be proud of.
And what I'd like to add to that, the folks that are here have spent countless hours working on various parts of this budget. Now, Kim and I could stand up here and talk about it and get our names in the paper and get our pictures made. But the reality is, this is not something that he and I put together. It is something that required the input of substantial numbers of members of both the House and the Senate, taking feedback from other members of the House and Senate, and feedback from members of the public. So it's a process that
any Democrats will support this budget, and or do you think members of your caucus are upset with it for whatever reason?
It's like anything. Any of us can probably find something in the budget that we don't like. We're talking about nearly $22 billion there. So at the end of the day, you have to take a measured approach and see what it does. And I've heard overwhelmingly positive. We may have a couple folks that vote no, but I would expect that some Democrats will vote for it. Don't know a count. I haven't put anybody on the spot to ask them, but we do feel comfortable we have enough votes to pass the budget.
Real quick on the economic development, what's actually in the budget as far as numbers, totals for like JDIG and other economic development programs?
I believe it was 30 million. There was a line item there. I believe 30 million is the actual number. Mary, I would refer to whatever the chart shows. The actual meat of the JDIG proposal, though, will be in House Bill 117, but it was the tax credits were accounted for in the finance package. Off the top of my head, I believe it was $30 million, but I could be wrong. I would defer to whatever the sheet shows.
So 30 million tax credits or 30 million credits?
I don't think it's either. I think what you will see as a line item in the budget is something that actually proves up some of the previous JD grants. The JD provisions that are in the economic development bill really have no immediate tax consequence as far as the biennium we're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. 30. I knew there was a wrinkle there. 30 references the money already in the system.
I understand the Senate budget had changed for state employee retiree health insurance benefits for future employees. Is that provision in the final budget in any form?
No. Tom?
Timing-wise, forgive me if you mentioned this, you expect to vote on this tomorrow, and then for critics who would say that's not a lot of time for a $22 billion document, it's hundreds of pages long, how would you respond to that?
I would say that the Senate plan is that if all the printing and the proofreading gets cared for and the budget is available to be released today, this afternoon, this evening, we would intend to have it on the Senate floor tomorrow. Under our rules, that's perfectly within the rules. And I think that the provisions that are in there have been much debated, much discussed, much talked about, and I don't think there's anything in there that anyone would be surprised by. They may be surprised in some respects by, we went this way on something as opposed to that way, but I think all of the provisions that are in there have been talked about.
Comprehensive bond package the voters will get to weigh in on. When will they get to weigh in on it?
We haven't decided the date yet. We're pretty much down to either the March primary or the general election next year, but we haven't decided yet.
Beyond the terminal groin issue, which I assume is still in there, is there anything else in this budget that was in neither House nor Senate budget? I mean, something that's significant that no one had talked about.
Nothing significant.
There's a lot of insignificant.
Be something.
We'll take two more questions. All right, Tom.
The Senate budget had a provision on municipal service districts. Is any form of that in the final product?
I think there's a compromise provision on that everybody agreed to.
Okay, and you could Bill just say what that involves compared to what the original was?
I don't know specifically, other than the folks that were talking about it agreed on it, but we can get you that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, one more question. If y'all have one.
The Clean Water Management Trust Fund, is that going to go with cultural arts?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much.